Hi there, thanks for joining me today. I have a flip through of a journal I recently completed. This is a big journal. I had been really looking forward to making this book because I loved the title, New Worlds to Conquer. And I really feel like that's such a great title for a journal, for someone to be writing their new experiences or what's going on in their life. New Worlds to Conquer seems appropriate. This book was published in 1929, so I'm not good on math. What does that make it? 93 years old? 94 years old? It's old. Let's just say it's old. Let me grab a ruler and I'll give you the dimensions because it's big too. So little over 6 inches wide, not quite 9.5 inches long, and it is not quite 2 inches thick. So big book. I had so much fun creating it into, it's sort of an all sorts / off on an adventure book. So it's got some quirky things in it. I take my quirky Catherine liberty with journals such as this. But I must say, one of the things I looked forward to with this book, because it was very plain. The cover was simply the title and the author, and it was very plain. The spine was really plain, and I just felt like a plain spine gives you a whole new substrate to work on for your art. And so these threads, these signature threads, are faux. They're not the actual signature threads that are holding in the new text block. I did them in an artsy way before I put the book together. The gold on the cover is gilding wax, and then I added a little label down here, which I think looks really cool, and I added a bit of art glitter, not art glitter glue, glossy accents. And then I did a little bit of stenciling up there, and I kind of roughed up the gilding wax so that it looks a little bit older, because I mean this old girl is almost 100 years old, so she's entitled to all of her wrinkles and dents and bumps and what have you. The hinges were quite thin, so I reinforced the hinges from inside with a dark brown fabric so that they can continue to fray if they want to as they age, and it'll just be dark brown fabric underneath. It has already started right here, so you should be aware right there you're going to see a split, because it was trying to come apart already. And I don't know if you're like me, I'm quite okay with that. There's a lot going on with this journal, so hopefully I'll remember to cover it all. And if not, feel free to ask questions in the comments down below, and I'll do my best to answer them. The picture on the front is an old master. This is one of the virgins who was a follower of Saint Ursula. And I liked it because, first of all, I love old masters, especially the religious ones. I love that she's got a book. I imagine, what if that's actually this book here? that she's holding in her hands. And I love that there's a ship, that maybe she's on her way somewhere. Now there's a little religious... I kind of like that quirky stuff. So I'm just... That's me. Hopefully that's you too. I aged it a bit because it was quite nice looking. The painting itself, the photo of the painting from the book that I cut it out of, it's lovely. So I made it look a little bit rougher. And when I just put her on the cover on her own, she just didn't look jazzy enough. So in behind there is some cotton, some frayed cotton. There's some stitching in some dark brown thread that's kind of crazy. I ripped the edges. I left the edges unglued, so they're loose. And again, I think it adds to the character. There is a seam binding tie that is permanent. So you'll always be able to open and close it, and you won't lose your ribbon. Now, it's a hidden hollow back spine, so let's discuss that first. Hidden hollow back spine, 9 signatures. I've added some ratty looking lace up here that I've done on purpose. I like that. I've also added a really nice looking gold permanent bookmark. A book this big, I think, really needs a permanent bookmark so that you know where you've last left off. There are 256 pages of varying sizes in this book, mostly full size, but you're going to see some smaller ones, some odd-shaped ones. It's, as I said, it's an all sorts book, and it's quirky, and it's just the way I like it. I used one of the original introduction pages to open the book. The end papers are, I believe, Tim Holtz. I'm never quite sure because, as is usual with my journals, most of these materials are from repurposed sources. Thrift stores, antique shops, Happy Mail, Happy Gifts, yard sales. If somebody else has owned it before, that's what I really prefer to use for most of my materials. Some things have to be new. Some things I choose to be new. There is a bulldog clip right there. Although it's been rusted to look old, it is brand new. I did purchase it new. So as we go in, you'll see along the edges here, and there's such a yummy profile to this book. I made use of all the chapter headings from the actual text block and made tabs. So for 9 signatures, I used the chapter headings right from 1 till chapter 9. I don't want this tour to take too long, so I'm going to try my best to just get through it, but you know me, if you've seen any of my other videos, I chatter quite a bit. There will be lots of sewing, lots of messy sewing. They have been tied off. If you don't like the loose threads, trim them off. There's also been quite a bit of hand sewing that's been purposefully done to look a little bit shoddy. I am not the world's best sewer, but I'm also not that bad either. But I just wanted to put a little something so that chapter 1 had a nice presentation. Most of the tea dyeing is done by me. If it wasn't done by me, most likely it's Lacey, and that means Nancy from Wishes and Weeds did it. Sears and Roebuck, this is from a reprint of their 1908 catalog. On this side, I was able to make use of a photo from the original text block. I didn't think I was going to be able to use much of the text block, but in the end I actually did. So that's kind of nice. I made a tuck spot out of that. There were 2 strips of photos, so I used one here and we'll see one later. A journaling card used from, it looks like it was a project that was put on by the Royal Ontario Museum for watching birds' nests. So I put a crow on it. I believe that's a crow. I don't believe it's a raven. Ravens have a larger hump and sort of a chunkier, more robust beak to them, from what I know. Again, lots of journaling space. This is a blank page out of another old book. Whenever possible, old pages from other books, I will put the date of that book that it came from. So this came from Home Remedies and How to Use Them, and it was published in 1897. I do that in pencil. If you don't like it, you can erase it very gently. This is really old but really cool vintage binder paper. A nice big blank spread for you. Trust me, those are hard for me to resist, and I resisted. A page out of a vintage children's composition book. This is sort of a waterfall of tea-dyed paper. I took inspiration from Eva from Bohemian Crafting, her son Jacob. I love how he came up with that, and I love to use it. I hand sewed a little bit of tea-dyed lace here, and I really like how this page ended up. And I hand sewed it right through, so I like how that looks. Chapter 2 down here. None of the tabs match, so they're all different. Chapter 2 has some little roses on it. Page out of a 1950s stamp book. A page out of a 1922 Dutch atlas. Smaller ledger paper, which I like. I like when pages have these unusual edges to them. And then this is actually a tuck spot. Let's put something in it so you can see. I'll hold this handy in case there's another tuck spot that we come across. This is from a 1950s teacher's book on phonetics. And this is the end tab from a player piano box of the roll of paper. This is a book from the 70s for sewing. And then I made 2 pockets here and just put a few little odds and ends for you to collage with if you so choose. And I must admit I took a little artistic license and collaged on the little pockets right there. I thought it kind of looked like a chest of drawers. Again, lots of journaling room. Chapter 3 is kind of plain, but there's a little bit of gold patterned tissue paper here. This is from a 1940s ledger book that I recently got on a shopping spree with Nancy and Alice. A statement, a blank statement, and it's obviously from the 1900s, the previous century. How's that for scary for us? I made a tuck spot from part of the page of a large dictionary, and I fussy cut her out of a book on the history of photography, so I did a stamp with camera, and I used a fussy cut word snippet that says cheese because she looks like she's posing. And then there's some tea-dyed bullet journal paper that I put in there. This is a little removable upper tab with a bit of seam binding tied on there. Just beautifully wrinkly and messy looking. And so I put that up there. You can put it wherever you like. And I started you off with some paper. Chapter 4 is, although it's another whale tail tab, I put a number 4 up there so that you can see it hanging over the edge. And I did a bit of stenciling with some lace just to make it look pretty. And I did it on the other side as well. On this side is half of one of those interesting smaller ledger papers. And I just felt like using up this odd little piece of offcut. So I sewed it on, and I had some fun with some unusual stamping. Just for the fun of it, so that it looks a little Frankenstein-y. This was one of those pages that we always have laying off to the side that we use to lean our spoons on and that as we're tea dyeing our papers. And I ended up liking how it ended up looking. Sometimes these papers for me will just end up into my recycling box, and that was just too cool to get rid of. So it's in this journal. A little bit of a torn up edge of wrapping paper that is a map. There's a pocket here with some of the leftover offcut for the end papers, and I had fun collaging a little bit on that pocket. And there's some I believe that's a Tim Holtz ticket, or else it could be a Kathy Holden. And then I added a little tag to it, so it's a pocket. I resisted writing on here so that you can. This came in a nice little gift that I received from Your Creative Studio. And this little leaf here can move about. It's just on there with a little brad. This was one of the photos out of the text block, the original text block, of some young ladies the traveler encountered when they were flying about the world. But I put it onto a vintage postcard that just wasn't as attractive. I think it was a building from Detroit. So it looks like a legitimate postcard now. So it's nice to make use of a page out of the book. And this is obviously out of it's either a dictionary or it's one of those small encyclopedias that are just a single volume and just have a paragraph on whatever topic it happens to be. Did I put the year for this one? I'll find the year for it because I believe that's from Everybody's Cyclopedia. And then of course here's our permanent bookmark that can go anywhere throughout the book. This is from a vintage photo album that I found thrifting one day out at my Weigh and Pay. Although the glassine was naturally yellow, I inked up and aged it a bit more and added some stamping and sewing to it. This tag that I created was also a photo out of the original text block and is a journaling spot for you. And just a card to journal on that I tea dyed. This is just a rusty kind of old business paper clip with some. Now my brain is having a brain cramp and I can't remember what this is called. And Nancy's probably yelling at her camera right now, telling me what it is, and it slipped my mind what that kind of lacing is called. Tatting? I believe it's tatting. On this page, this was from a book I had on the first 300 documented years of world discovery. It's a separate, different book, but I thought this was really cool, and there were both sides of it on the page, so I put one on either side and made a tab out of it and used some really beautiful red and gold fabric that I've used a few times in this book, you'll see, and has it sticking out the side to look cool. It's also a tuck spot on this side, not on this side, and it's chapter 5. The paper that chapter 5 is from one of the original end papers. It was a pink map of the travels of the original person, and then this is genuine. Came in with some happy gifting ephemera from, I'm sorry, I can't recall who was the generous person, but it's in French, and it's French to English, so somebody was trying to practice their French, and I liked the writing on it. Was happy to receive that. This is from a 1946 Reckoner. I made this pocket on purpose to look like it might have, that someone may have saved part of the dress that she was wearing when she posed for this, so that hopefully it feels like it's hundreds of years old and this is all that's left of the dress, but it's precious. And I did hand sewing down the sides, and I sewed on some hand crocheted lace and some gold lace here. Then there's a Two Nanas bookmark as ever that goes into my journals. There's a faux carte de visite here of a little girl looking in a mirror, and you can see that she's smiling. And those are rare in carte de visite. That's a tongue twister for me today. Those are very rare, and to get a smile in one of them. And there's, on the back, I just made a little journaling spot. Now you'll also see here, this is actually the original first page, and I left it as is, except of course I made it. I tore the edge and I fortified the back because the copyright date was on the back, so I couldn't glue it onto anything. And I really like when I can save the copyright date, so you can enjoy that and know that for sure this book, that's how old this book is. And again, I used some of the red and gold fabric up here. Did lots of Frankensteining of paper and using up the ends. If I had to cut the bottom off somewhere, I tried to sew it onto the side and play around with all the stitching offered on my mom's old sewing machine. Again, I was strong and didn't do anything on that huge center spread. A little tip out here. Chapter 6 is tickets. I believe these tickets were from a pack from Tim Holtz. A 1940 Pitman shorthand book. I love shorthand manuals when you can put a page in a journal. This page is from a guest book that I have. I tea-dyed it for a yacht, for someone who owns a boat and they have company on it. And I just did a little paper ruffle here that I did a bit of stenciling on, and of course, again, just had lots of fun with the sewing. Oh, someone's dreaming over there. It's okay. Lie down, go to sleep. if you're new here, I have a puppy. I have a studio puppy. Again, more Frankensteining, making the paper fit the book so that I could get the best use out of it. This is from a book on photography that I have, so I fussy cut her out and made my own paper doll. And she felt like she was looking up at something up here, so I stamped a little bird up in a cage. And it reminded me of, you'll see when we get to the back, but I'll show you now so that it makes sense to you. There are bird cages on the back end papers. Another flip out of some tea-dyed ledger paper. An envelope that was sewn right in to the... no, actually this was glued in because I've used washi tape to reinforce where I glued the end of the envelope on. I trimmed it off and glued it on. And this washi tape came in Happy Mail. And then I just tucked a little something in the envelope for you. On this side, this came from that book that I have on 300 Years of World Discovery, and I made a pocket on the other side of the envelope, so there's just a vintage bridge tally in there for now. Chapter 7 is here. It is also used from part of the offcut of the paper that I used for the end papers, so I really tried my best not to waste that one sheet of paper. Scrapbook paper is very very precious to me. I don't have a lot. And then there's just a little charm here. I buy necklaces at thrift stores and take them apart, and so that's just there for fun. And it still opens up. I was able to fold the whale tail tab so that you can open and close it. Tea dyed from a guest book. I love putting those in journals. A little pocket here. This page was too long, so I simply flipped it up and sewed it into a little tuck spot and made some journaling spaces. This was actually from a book on photography. This is from a French school book, and this was in the original text block for this book, but I thought this fellow looks so jazzy and snazzy in his tights, he needed butterfly wings, so I gave him butterfly wings. And the book needed a bit more music, and I want you to know that it's also a tuck spot, so I just put a Rolodex card there. Did a little bit of stenciling. A little more Frankensteining and flips out. Little sewing and a tab up there. Here's the other side of the tiny little tuck spot. This is out of the... Actually, this is from a piece of note paper from Your Creative Studio. And it looked like he was looking at something. And I don't know whether he was looking out to France or whether he's looking at the Rolodex card. More tip out. Chapter 8. Whenever possible, it actually is the paper that said Chapter 8, which of course was plain, so in this case I stamped on it. Sometimes I glued roses on it, that sort of thing. In the bulldog clip here, I've added some holy cards that are genuine. I found these at a little shop in Niagara Falls, Ontario. This is from a book from 1907 on how to learn Hebrew. This is from a 1930s book that was for selling Dr. Miles' formula. And as is common with my All Sorts book, somewhere in there is mentioned that Dr. Miles' formula will help keep you regular. Don't ask. I love that. Honest testimonials from honest people. A little photo. And I just wanted a crazy edge here with lots to look at. I did a bit of stamping on it. Of course, some funky sewing and a little bit of stamping here and fussy cut from a book. And this is tea dyed. It's a diary. I have a 10-year diary for planting your garden. The pages are nice and big. Chapter 9, so the final signature. And there is a little charm on here of Our Lady. And it was silver. I wanted it gold, so I used alcohol ink. And she's on there with a bulb pin. A little tuck spot on a little page. And there's a genuine ticket from London Transportation. Another page out of a tea-dyed guest book page. This is another part of this will look familiar. It's a huge piece of paper, and I'm usually able to get several folios out of it. Here's the other side of the page from out of the original text block, and I've just put a little card in there. This is out of a 70s sewing book, and I did some faux cellophane tape to reinforce it because it wanted to crack. This page is from 1918. I didn't mention it because you can't see it from what I glued on here, but you can tell from over here. This was one of my Christmas books that I did this year, The Little Holly Girl. So it's from 1918. And then the final page, I did some fussy cutting. I like how it worked out. You'll notice that this bird actually fits underneath this bird, which was how I was able to make use of the offcut. That in order for that to be 12 inches, I had to trim this bird off. So I put it up here, and I figure he's looking down and saying, oh, thank goodness I'm not in those cages, or who knows what he's thinking. And it's a tuck spot, so I put a little tea-dyed blank note in there. And this was fussy cut from another page out of a book I was working in. And as usual, I put my little logo with my signature and the year that I made it, 2023. And that was actually the original The End from the end of the regular text block. So that is, I think I covered everything. New Worlds to Conquer. I really had so much fun with this book, and I just love how that profile looks of all those tabs, and how there's really no rhyme or reason for where they are, all the fun things that are up here, and the tea-dyed seam binding that I used to make the ties, I've left them as loops so they're easier to tie, and it makes your bow look fluffier in the end. I also have a package of some of the leftover photos, the ones that I thought would make nice ephemera for you to have fun with, and some of the original text block in case you want to use it as backing for tags. It's not very good paper, so it will most likely need to be backed. This is just a rusty old paper clip. I rusted it. Although it is vintage, I did the rusting. A leftover little piece of one of the end papers. Another one of the inner front pages. There was one side of the end papers left over, so I've included that. And if you wanted to make use of that, you'll be able to. So this will go along with the book. Sometimes it's fun to continue making things for your journal, using things out of the text block that was in it at one time in its life. So this book will be available for sale in my Etsy shop probably in about an hour. So I will make note in the description down below of the actual time that it will be available in my Etsy shop, and there'll be a link to my Etsy shop there if you're interested and you want to go over and take a look. That would be great. I hope you enjoyed this flip through, and we'll talk soon. Take care. Bye.